There's a place in California where the sun shines bright over the San Francisco Bay. The water sparkles. Boats sail past. Tourists take pictures of the Golden Gate Bridge just a few miles away. But right there, sitting on the edge of that beautiful water, stands something dark. Something most people try to forget exists. San Quentin State Prison. From the outside, it looks almost peaceful. Old brick buildings. A wall. But inside those walls, something else is happening. Something that would make your heart race if you knew the whole story. On August 21, 1971, something happened here that changed everything. 6 people died in a single day. 3 were guards just doing their jobs. 3 were prisoners. The blood stained the floors of a place they call the Adjustment Center. That day became known as Black August, and it's a day that still haunts San Quentin. But here's the thing nobody tells you. That was just one day. One terrible day in a place where terrible days happen more often than anyone wants to admit. If you want to know the full truth about what happens behind these walls, hit that subscribe button right now. Drop a comment below and tell me, would you ever visit a prison? Let's uncover this mystery together. Most people think they know what prison is like. They've seen movies. They've watched TV shows. Maybe they think it's just bad food, boring days, and people counting down time until they can leave. They're wrong. At San Quentin, there are special places. Units where they send the prisoners nobody else wants. The ones who are too dangerous, too violent, too broken. These aren't just regular prison cells. These are places within a place. A prison within a prison. The Adjustment Center is one of them. When guards talk about the Adjustment Center, their voices change. Some won't talk about it at all. The ones who do speak carefully, they're choosing every word. Because the Adjustment Center isn't just where they put difficult prisoners. It's where they put the ones who tried to kill someone, the ones who attacked guards, the ones who caused riots. It's the worst of the worst. Imagine a cell so small you can touch both walls with your arms stretched out. 46 square feet. That's smaller than most people's bathrooms. Now imagine living in that space for 23 hours every day. That's what life looks like in the Adjustment Center. But size isn't the scariest part. The scariest part is who you're living next to. In 2020, something invisible came to San Quentin. Something nobody could fight with fists or weapons. Something that spread through the air itself. COVID-19. The virus moved through San Quentin like wildfire through dry grass. Within weeks, over 2,000 prisoners got sick. 28 people died. The cells were so crowded, so small, so packed together that stopping the virus was impossible. Guards got sick. Prisoners got sick. Some of them never recovered. But even before COVID, San Quentin was already sick in a different way. The buildings are old, really old. Some of them were built in the 1920s, over 100 years ago. The pipes leak. The walls crumble. Paint peels off in long strips. In summer, the cells turn into ovens because there's no air conditioning. In winter, they're freezing because the heat barely works. This isn't just uncomfortable, it's dangerous. And here's something that might surprise you. San Quentin wasn't always meant to be this way. When it first opened in 1852, it was supposed to be different, better. They had big ideas about reform and rehabilitation. But over time, something changed. The focus shifted from helping people get better to just keeping them locked away. More prisoners came, then more, then more. The cells that were built for one person now hold 2. Sometimes the second person sleeps on the floor. Sometimes they sleep on a thin mattress barely thicker than a blanket. They call it double bunking, and it makes everything worse. When you put 2 people in a space meant for one, tempers flare. Small arguments become big fights. Privacy disappears completely. Even going to the bathroom becomes humiliating because your cellmate is right there, just feet away. Now imagine doing that for years. 10 years, 20 years. Some prisoners at San Quentin have been locked up since before you were born. East Block is another special place at San Quentin. But unlike the Adjustment Center, East Block has a different kind of reputation. This is where death row inmates live. Over 500 men waiting to die. California hasn't executed anyone since 2006. But the men on death row don't know if that will change. They wake up every morning not knowing if this is the year, this is the month, This is the week. They wait, and wait, and wait some more. Some have been waiting for 30 years. The guards who work at San Quentin have one of the hardest jobs imaginable. Every day they walk into buildings filled with people who have nothing to lose. People who are angry, desperate, sometimes violent. In recent years, attacks on staff have increased. A guard might be walking down a hallway when suddenly someone grabs them, or throws something, or worse. The prison keeps records of these attacks. The numbers keep climbing. More assaults on officers, more injuries, more close calls. Why? Some say it's because the prison is too crowded. Others say it's because mental health care is terrible. Others point to gang activity. The truth is probably all of these things mixed together. Speaking of mental health, here's a number that should shock you. San Quentin has about 3,200 prisoners. Only 70 mental health providers work there. Do the math. That's one mental health worker for every 45 prisoners. Imagine having a therapist you share with 40 for other people. How much help could you really get? Many prisoners at San Quentin are dealing with serious mental illness. Depression, anxiety, PTSD, schizophrenia. Some hear voices. Some have panic attacks. Some hurt themselves because they can't handle the pressure anymore, and there aren't enough people to help them. This creates a cycle. Mental illness makes prisoners act out. Acting out gets them sent to the adjustment center. The adjustment center makes their mental illness worse, which makes them act out more. Round and round it goes. But here's where the story takes an unexpected turn. Something is changing at San Quentin. Something big. Something that might seem impossible given everything you just learned. They're tearing it down. Well, not all of it, but large parts of it are being completely rebuilt. The state of California is spending $239 million to transform San Quentin into something different. Something they're calling a rehabilitation center. The old death row, they're dismantling it. They're moving those 500 men to other prisons across California. The crumbling buildings? Some will be demolished. Others will be renovated. The question everyone's asking is simple. Can you really change a place this broken? Can you take somewhere with this much history, this much pain, this much violence, and turn it into something better? Some people say yes. They point to countries like Norway and Denmark where prisons focus on rehabilitation instead of punishment, where prisoners learn skills, get education, prepare for life after release. Other people say no. They say San Quentin is too far gone, that some prisoners are beyond help, that the problems run too deep. What do you think? Can a place this dark really change? Drop your thoughts in the comments and subscribe to follow this journey to the end. The truth is, nobody knows for sure yet. The transformation is just beginning. The old San Quentin still exists, with all its problems and pain. But something else is starting to grow in the cracks. Something that might be hope, or might be just another failed experiment. Either way, the story isn't over. Not by a long shot. There are secrets still buried in these walls. Stories that haven't been told. Mysteries that remain unsolved. What really happened during Black August? Who are the people living in these volatile units right now? And what does life actually feel like when you're locked in a cell the size of a parking space? The answers might surprise you. The men inside San Quentin's most dangerous units aren't just numbers. They're not just inmates or prisoners. They're people with names, histories, and stories that led them to the worst place in California's prison system. But understanding how someone ends up in the adjustment center requires understanding something most people never think about. Prison has its own world, its own rules, its own power structures, and its own violence. When a new prisoner arrives at San Quentin, they go through what's called reception. Guards search them, give them prison clothes, assign them a number. That number becomes more important than their name. They'll be called by that number for years, maybe decades. But here's what the guards don't tell them during reception. Where you end up inside San Quentin depends on more than just your crime. It depends on your behavior, your connections. Sometimes, it depends on things completely out of your control. Gang activity plays a huge role. California prisons have some of the most powerful gangs in America. The Mexican Mafia, the Aryan Brotherhood, The Black Gorilla Family, Nostra Familia. These aren't just groups of friends. They're organized criminal networks that operate both inside and outside prison walls. The Black Gorilla family has special significance at San Quentin. They were founded here in the 1960s by a man named George Jackson. He was a prisoner who became a revolutionary. He wrote books, inspired thousands, and on that bloody day in August 1971, he was one of the 6 people who died. What happened that day is still disputed. Some say Jackson tried to escape. Others say he was murdered. The official report says guards shot him while he was running across the prison yard with a gun. But how did a prisoner in maximum security get a gun? That question has never been fully answered. What we do know is this: Jackson's death sparked riots across California. Prisoners in other facilities refused to eat. Protests erupted. And at San Quentin, tension reached levels that would take years to cool down. The adjustment center was at the heart of it all. After the violence of Black August, 6 prisoners were charged with murder. They became known as the San Quentin Six. Their trial became one of the longest in California history. It lasted 16 months. Only 2 were convicted. Think about that. 6 people died. Only 2 were held responsible. The others were either acquitted or had charges dropped. Why? Because proving what happened inside the adjustment center that day was nearly impossible. Too much chaos, too many conflicting stories, too much blood. But the legacy lived on. The adjustment center became a symbol, a place where the most extreme confrontations between prisoners and the system happen. Even today, decades later, guards approach the adjustment center differently than other units. They move in pairs, never alone. They check every corner. They stay alert. Because in the adjustment center, anything can happen. Life in these volatile units follows a strict routine, but that routine can be shattered in seconds. A typical day starts early. Around a.m., lights come on. Breakfast arrives through a slot in the cell door. Usually it's something simple: oatmeal, a piece of fruit, toast, coffee that tastes like dirty water. Then comes the waiting. Prisoners in the adjustment center spend 23 hours a day in their cells. Only 1 hour is allowed for yard time, though calling it a yard is generous. It's usually a small concrete area surrounded by high walls. No grass, no trees, just concrete and sky. Some prisoners use that hour to exercise. Push-ups, sit-ups, running in place, anything to keep their bodies from breaking down. Others just stand there, feeling the sun on their face. After 23 hours in artificial light, even weak sunlight feels like a gift. But here's the cruel part. Sometimes that 1 hour gets canceled. A lockdown happens. A fight breaks out somewhere else in the prison. A guard calls in sick, and there aren't enough staff. When that happens, prisoners stay in their cells for 24 hours straight, sometimes longer. Days blur together. Weeks feel like months. Months feel like years. The psychological impact is devastating. Humans weren't designed to live in cages. Our brains need stimulation, social interaction, movement, purpose. Strip all that away, and strange things start happening. Some prisoners talk to themselves. Some pace their cells for hours, walking the same 3 steps back and forth, back and forth, back and forth. Some stop caring about hygiene, stop showering, stop changing clothes. Others find ways to survive mentally. They read books, write letters. Some teach themselves new languages or study for college degrees through mail order programs. But everyone breaks eventually. Maybe not completely, maybe not permanently, but everyone has moments where the walls feel like they're closing in, where the silence becomes deafening, where hope feels like a cruel joke. And when someone breaks, that's when violence often follows. A prisoner might attack their cellmate over something tiny, a borrowed item not returned, a comment taken the wrong way, breathing too loud, or they might attack a guard during the brief moments when cell doors open. These attacks happen fast. Guards call them spontaneous assaults. 1 second everything is calm. The next second someone is bleeding. The weapons prisoners create are terrifyingly creative. A toothbrush melted and sharpened into a knife. Razor blades embedded in soap. broken pieces of metal from bed frames. Nothing is just an object in prison. Everything is a potential weapon. This is why San Quentin has seen increasing violence in recent years. More assaults on staff, more prisoner-on-prisoner attacks, more blood on concrete floors. But physical violence isn't the only kind. There's also the violence of neglect. Remember those 70 mental health providers for 3,200 prisoners? That means some prisoners wait months to see a therapist. When someone is hearing voices or planning to hurt themselves, months might as well be forever. Suicide attempts happen regularly. Some succeed, others fail, and the prisoner ends up in an even smaller isolation cell under constant watch. The system calls this suicide watch. It means someone checks on you every 15 minutes. You lose your clothes and get a thick blanket that can't be torn into strips. You lose your sheets, your pillow, anything you could use to hurt yourself. It's meant to keep you alive, but it feels like punishment for being sick. This is the reality behind the walls. If this is opening your eyes to something you never knew existed, hit subscribe. We're going deeper, and you won't want to miss what comes next. Now here's where things get complicated. Not everyone in San Quentin's volatile units is a violent monster. Some are there because of the broken mental health system. Some are there because they couldn't follow rules designed for people without trauma or mental illness. Some are there because of gang politics they couldn't escape. In California prisons, refusing to join a gang can be as dangerous as joining one. Gangs control everything. Who gets what job? Who gets protection? Who gets targeted? If you refuse to join, you're seen as weak. Fair game. If you join, you're locked into a system of violence and loyalty that might require you to hurt someone to prove yourself. Either way, you lose. Many prisoners end up in the adjustment center not because they wanted to be violent, but because violence found them. They fought back in self-defense. They attacked someone who threatened them. They made choices in impossible situations. Does that excuse violence? No. Does it explain it? Sometimes. The world inside San Quentin is nothing like the world outside. The rules are different. The stakes are different. A moment of weakness can cost you your life. Understanding this doesn't mean accepting it. It means recognizing that fixing San Quentin requires more than just punishing bad behavior. It requires addressing why that behavior happens in the first place. This is why the rehabilitation plan matters so much. California is betting $239 million that they can break the cycle, that they can transform San Quentin from a place that creates more violence into a place that reduces it. They're calling it the California model, inspired by Scandinavian prisons where violence is rare, where prisoners live in small communities, not giant warehouses, where they learn job skills and get real therapy. In Norway, prisoners might live in rooms with actual furniture. They cook their own meals. They wear normal clothes. The prison looks more like a college campus than a dungeon. Recidivism rates in Norway? About 20%. That means only 1 in 5 prisoners returns to prison after release. In California, it's around 50%. Half of all released prisoners end up back behind bars. The numbers tell a story. Punishment alone doesn't work. People leave prison more damaged than when they enter, more violent, more traumatized, more likely to hurt someone again. But can San Quentin really become like a Norwegian prison? Many people doubt it. The cultural differences are enormous. The political will might not exist. The cost is staggering. And then there's the biggest question. What about the prisoners who are truly dangerous? The ones who have killed multiple people? The ones with life sentences without possibility of parole? What kind of rehabilitation makes sense for someone who will die in prison? These are the questions California is wrestling with right now. And San Quentin sits at the center of that struggle. The old system is crumbling. The new system hasn't fully formed yet. Right now, San Quentin exists in between. Part prison, part construction site, part experiment. And the people living in those volatile units? They're caught in the middle of history being made. The transformation of San Quentin isn't happening in some distant future. It's happening right now, while prisoners still live in crumbling cells, while guards still walk dangerous corridors, while families still visit loved ones through thick glass windows. This creates a strange reality. Old San Quentin and new San Quentin exist side by side. In one building, prisoners live in cells built a century ago, with peeling paint and broken toilets. In another building, construction crews are tearing down walls and installing modern facilities. The sound of hammers and drills echoes through the prison yard. Dust fills the air. The future is literally being built on top of the past. But here's what makes this moment so important. The people inside San Quentin right now are the test. They'll determine whether this transformation is real or just another broken promise. Let's talk about what's actually changing. First, death row is being dismantled. This is massive. California's death row has been the largest in America for decades. Over 500 men waiting in limbo, knowing they're sentenced to die, but not knowing when or if it will actually happen. The state started something called the Condemned Inmate Transfer Program. They're moving death row prisoners to other facilities across California. Not all at once. Slowly, carefully, but it's happening. Where are they going? To prisons that have special units for high-security inmates. Places with therapy programs, educational opportunities, jobs. This might sound strange. Why give people sentenced to death access to education and jobs? The answer is simple but profound. Because they're still human beings. And because keeping someone locked in a tiny cell for 23 hours a day, with nothing to do but think about death, is torture. Even if society has decided they deserve to die, do they deserve to suffer for decades while waiting? California has decided the answer is no. Governor Gavin Newsom put a moratorium on executions in 2019. That means no one will be executed as long as he's governor. The death chamber at San Quentin, the room where executions happened, has been closed. Some people celebrated, others were furious. Families of murder victims felt betrayed. They'd waited years, sometimes decades, for justice. Now, they're told it might never come. This tension runs through everything happening at San Quentin. Every change creates winners and losers. Every reform means something different to different people. For guards, the transformation brings uncertainty. Some welcome it. They're tired of violence, tired of watching people deteriorate, tired of the constant danger. Others worry about their jobs. If San Quentin becomes a rehabilitation center instead of a maximum security prison, will they still be needed? Will they be retrained, transferred, let go? The Prison Guards Union has been cautiously supportive, but also protective of their members' interests. Change is scary, even when the current situation is terrible. For prisoners, the transformation brings something even more complicated. Hope mixed with skepticism. Many prisoners at San Quentin have heard promises before. Promises of reform. Promises of better conditions. Promises of change. Those promises usually disappeared like morning fog over the bay. So when officials talk about turning San Quentin into a rehabilitation center, many prisoners think, "I'll believe it when I see it." Can you blame them? Some have been locked up since the 1980s. They've seen governors come and go. They've seen programs start and stop. They've watched budgets get cut and facilities get worse. Why should this time be different? But here's the thing. This time might actually be different. The $239 million investment is real money. Construction has already started. Death row is actually being emptied. These aren't just words on paper anymore. The plan includes creating spaces for education, workshops where prisoners can learn trades like carpentry, plumbing, or computer programming, mental health facilities with enough staff to actually help people. There's even talk of allowing more family visits. Currently, visits at San Quentin happen through glass with phones. No touching, no hugs, just seeing each other through a barrier. Imagine not hugging your mother for 20 years. The new plan might include contact visits for some prisoners, real conversations, real physical contact, real human connection. For someone who's been isolated for decades, this could be life-changing. But and this is important, not everyone will get these benefits. The most violent prisoners, the ones in the adjustment center who have attacked guards or other inmates, will likely remain in high-security conditions. The transformation doesn't mean everyone gets treated the same. It means people get opportunities to change. but they have to earn those opportunities through behavior. This is the balance California is trying to strike. Rehabilitation without being naive about danger. Hope without ignoring reality. If you're still watching, you're one of the few people who actually care about understanding these complex issues. Subscribe and join the conversation in the comments. What's your biggest question about prison reform? Now, let's talk about something nobody wants to discuss, but everyone should understand. What happens when prisoners eventually leave? Most people don't realize this, but the vast majority of prisoners will eventually be released. Even at San Quentin, even in those volatile units, most people aren't serving life sentences. They'll get out. They'll walk through those prison gates, and they'll try to rebuild lives in a world that has moved on without them. The question is, what kind of person leaves San Quentin? If someone spends 10 years in a cell, surrounded by violence, with no mental health care, no job training, no education, what happens when they're suddenly free? They're angry, traumatized, skilled at prison survival, but not at regular life. They don't know how to navigate modern technology. They don't have job experience. They might not have a place to live. So they often end up back in prison. The cycle continues. This is what California is trying to break. By focusing on rehabilitation, the hope is that people leave San Quentin better than they arrived. With skills, with education, with therapy that helps them process trauma and violence. Will it work for everyone? No, some people are too damaged, too dangerous, too committed to violence. But if it works for even half, that's thousands of people who don't commit new crimes, thousands of potential victims who stay safe, thousands of families that don't get destroyed. The math makes sense. The morality makes sense. The question is whether California has the courage to see it through. Because here's the hard truth. This transformation will be expensive. It will be slow, and it will include failures. Some prisoners given opportunities will waste them. Some will commit new crimes. Some will hurt people. When that happens, critics will say, "See, we told you rehabilitation doesn't work. We should just lock them up and throw away the key." The test will be whether California stays committed even when things go wrong. Real change is messy. Real change includes setbacks. Real change requires believing that people can grow, even when evidence suggests otherwise. The story of San Quentin is really a story about a bigger question. What do we do with people who break our most important rules? Do we just punish them, lock them away, and forget they exist? Or do we try to help them become better? Even knowing some won't change. Different people will answer differently. There's no easy answer. But what's happening at San Quentin right now is California's answer. For better or worse, for richer or poorer, in success or failure, they're betting that change is possible. The prisoners in those volatile units are watching closely. Some with hope, some with doubt, all with the lived experience of knowing what San Quentin has been. Will it become something different? Walk through San Quentin today, and you'll see both possibilities existing at once. You'll see old cells that smell like decades of despair, and you'll see construction crews building something new. You'll see guards who've worked there for 20 years, scarred by violence they've witnessed. And you'll see young staff being trained in new approaches focused on dignity and rehabilitation. You'll see prisoners who've given up, who shuffle through days waiting to die. And you'll see prisoners in new programs, learning skills, planning for futures they never thought they'd have. San Quentin is a place of contradictions. Always has been, maybe always will be. It sits on some of California's most valuable real estate. That waterfront location is worth billions. Developers have dreamed for years about what they could build there if the prison closed. Luxury condos, shopping centers, parks, anything but a prison. But San Quentin isn't going anywhere. It's too important symbolically, too connected to California's history, too much a part of the criminal justice system. Instead, it's transforming in place, becoming something new while remaining something old. The men in the adjustment center, in East Block, in all those volatile units, are living through history. They're part of an experiment that could change how America thinks about punishment and rehabilitation. Their stories matter. Their experiences matter. Whether they succeed or fail in this new system matters. Because if San Quentin can change, if a place this broken, this violent, this damaged can become something better, then maybe other things can change too. Maybe other systems that seem permanent and unchangeable can actually be transformed. Maybe redemption is possible even in the darkest places. Or maybe it's all just another dream that will crash against the rocks of reality. Time will tell. The sun still rises over San Francisco Bay every morning. It shines on the water. It shines on the boats. It shines on tourists taking pictures. And it shines on San Quentin, on the old walls and the new construction, on the guards and the prisoners, on the past and the future existing together in an uneasy present. Life on the edge at San Quentin's most volatile units continues, different than it was, not yet what it might become, somewhere in between, just like all of us. This is a story that's still being written. The next chapter depends on choices being made right now by people you'll never meet, in places you'll hopefully never see. But those choices affect all of us. They shape what kind of society we live in, what we value, what we believe about human nature and second chances. If this documentary opened your eyes, if it made you think differently, if it challenged what you thought you knew, don't let it end here. Subscribe to stay informed about stories that matter. Share this video with someone who needs to see it. And drop a comment below with your honest thoughts. Do you believe people can change? Do you believe San Quentin can change? Let's keep this conversation going, because the only thing worse than the problems we've seen today is pretending they don't exist. Thanks for watching, and remember, the truth is always more complicated than we want it to be.